Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with 10 stunning albums of non-standard repertoire on Dacapo. Yeah, the Danish national label. This is another one of those amazing independent labels, which exist, thank God, because European countries subsidize the arts, at least to a degree unheard of over here, and they get to make recordings, lots of recordings. Now, some of those recordings are, of composers who are of only local interest, let's face it, because that's what they're basically paid to do. And so there's some things that aren't going to be as interesting to those outside of Denmark, but there is a lot of really, really good stuff. And I want to go through the list of 10 stunning recordings of interesting repertoire that the world needs to know about. There's so much more to Danish music than Carl Nielsen or Niels Gade or any of those, or Yada, however you pronounce him, who knows. I mean, this talk is going to be a positive fiesta of mispronunciation. So, dear Danish friends, I apologize in advance, but don't waste your time correcting me because it's not going to get any better. And maybe I'll never talk about these people ever again. No, I'm just kidding. I always will. I will promote them relentlessly because they deserve it. They absolutely deserve it. So let's start with Rued Langgaard, or Langgaard, if you want to pronounce it that way. It's got lots of G's and lots of A's. So, what that does to the pronunciation, I have no clue. And I have two boxes here, actually. This counts as one out of 10. The complete symphonies and the complete string quartets. Now, Langgaard was an extraordinary personality. He was a total failure in his lifetime. He was completely ignored. He detested Carl Nielsen. Oh my goodness, because Nielsen represented the classical, intellectual, rational element in Danish music, and Langgaard was just the opposite. He was a mystic. He was out of his mind. He was incredibly religious. His music was based entirely on romantic irrationality, which is enormous fun. He wrote 16 symphonies, and they're all marvelously played in this box. There's also a bunch of good ones on Chandos, too. I mean, there's some multiple recordings of these now, and they run the gamut from huge nature poems in 5 movements to single movement, Scriabinesque, poem of ecstasy type things, to fake Mendelssohn, to program symphonies that, have titles like Daddy's Rushing Off to the Office. I mean, just really weird stuff, but often captivating. Really, really captivating. His opera, The Antichrist, as you can imagine, well, that's a hoot. That's enjoyable. I mean, Dacapo has a fabulous performance of that, as well as a DVD that shows lots of people running around looking insane, which you might expect when the Antichrist pops up. And there's one of the main characters is called the Great Whore or something like that. I mean, it's just nuts. And he wrote 6 numbered string quartets and then a whole bunch of lovely other works for string quartet. I mean, I just have, some sample titles here. They're really, really captivating. You'd be amazed. So let's see. Train Passing By. There's the Train Passing By for string quartet. Landscape in Twilight, and there's The Walk, and this is quite lovely. This one here, what's this one called? I have to find it. There we go. Rose Garden Play. I mean, one movement is called Mozart. Wonder what he was doing in the Rose Garden. It's really fascinating stuff. They're beautiful works. This is with the Nightingale String Quartet. And of course, the list of works is down below here, so you can see what they all are, and you can look them all up on Dacapo. So Langgaard is your first really amazing composer that Dacapo has promoted. Just an extraordinary, extraordinary character. Next, let's just drop back about 1 billion years to Friedrich Kuhlau. Now, Kuhlau is known for writing lots of music for piano. He was a piano guy. What are his dates here? 1786 to 1832. Exactly. And this is a series of solo piano works played by Marie-Louise Bodendorf, who's a very fine pianist. And this is volume 2 that I'm holding here. It has the 6 sonatinas, which are still performed as sort of like beginners or learning pieces for budding pianists. Kuhlau was really a wonderful, wonderful sort of early romantic, late classical keyboard guy, like Clementi, I guess you want to put him in that kind of a category. Lovely works, beautifully performed, and who else is going to do it if not the Danish national label? Terrific stuff, worth exploring, really worth exploring, interesting and enjoyable. So next, I want to talk about Carl Nielsen. Now, Nielsen, of course, gets performed pretty regularly now. It wasn't always the case. And Dacapo has fabulous performances of the basic Nielsen stuff, the opera masquerade, the symphonies, the chamber works. It has all of it, and really, really good performances, including that Nielsen cycle with the New York Philharmonic, which is just first rate. But I want to talk about this, one of their most recent Nielsen releases. It's the complete incidental music to The Mother, Opus 41. Nielsen wrote quite a bit of incidental music. A lot of it is not well known. And one of the advantages that a label like Dacapo has is that it can do a deep dive into these composers, even the popular ones, even the ones you think you know, and unearth all kinds of nifty stuff that we wouldn't otherwise have an opportunity to hear. So we get all of his sort of obscure chamber music, we get a disc of his cantatas, and all of his incidental music, including this, which is beautiful. There's all kinds of nice, wonderful music in here that sounds like vintage Nielsen, but people don't know it. Well, some people know it because I actually used a piece from this about fog or something. Wait a minute, let me find out what this is called. They've got Saga Dream is in here. Saga Dream is used in scene 1. And the mist is rising, or the fog is lifting, yes, that's what it is. The fog is lifting. It's really, really beautiful. It's like for flute and harp. I played it and sang, oh, guess what this is? And of course, everybody from Denmark instantly knew what it was. So that was the end of that series of videos. But really, get The Mother by Nielsen. If you're a Nielsen person, you're going to want to hear these things. You really are. It's like the Sibelius incidental music. It's really worth listening to and getting to know. Then there's the other Nielsen, Ludolf Nielsen. Yeah, Ludolf. What were his dates? Let's see. Ludolf was almost an exact contemporary of Carl, believe it or not. Let's see. He was born in 1876. And it doesn't actually say what his dates are in here. I mean, I'm sure it does somewhere, but no. Oh, well. And he never died, apparently. I mean, he lived forever. No, he was, let's see, no. And this disc, he wrote some symphonies, which are lovely pieces, very, very beautiful and worth hearing. They are slightly more, I would say, sort of romantic and loosely organized than Nielsen. Nielsen was really tightly, But there's a lot of similarity between the two. The emphasis on folk music, both of them came from rural backgrounds, and so they were steeped in the same sort of musical tradition. And it's fascinating to compare them. But this disc, the one I have here, has two really masterpieces, beautiful works. One is called The Tower of Babel. It's a cantata, about 35 minutes long. It was considered, according to the little note back here that I'm staring at, unplayable when premiered in 1916, and had to wait 80 years to be performed again, but it's a masterpiece. It's a great work. I reviewed it for ClassicsToday.com, or at least someone did. There's a review there of this particular disc, but this is the one I'd start with. And then there's a wonderful symphonic poem called Forest Walk, a nature poem, beautiful and long. It's 27 minutes and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 movements. It's a very, very, very intricate and beautifully worked out piece. So these are gorgeous. And Ludolf Nielsen, if you like your Nielsens, this is someone you really want to hear. This is with the Danish National Radio Symphony Orchestra and Choir under Owain Arwell Hughes. Beautifully done. Get to know Ludolf L. Nielsen, not C. Nielsen. Definitely worth giving a shot at, or a shout out to. And here's another fascinating one. Who knew these people existed? Asger Hamerik, or Asger Hamerik. I don't know how you pronounce it. I'm not worried about it because no one knows who he is. And so I'm just mentioning him. I'm further ahead anyway. He wrote, 7 symphonies and a Requiem, all of which are here, along with a wonderful quotation of the ClassicsToday.com review on the back of the box. Thank you, Dacapo. But no, Hamerik was also a very interesting character. His dates were 1843 to 1923. But his 7 symphonies were all written in the United States. He was the director for 27 years of the Peabody Conservatory in Baltimore, from about, the 1860s or 70s up until like the 1890s or the early 19s, something like that. It was a long and fertile period for him. He was a student of Berlioz, of all people. I mean, how many people realize that a student of Berlioz from Denmark wound up in Baltimore, where he wrote 7 symphonies? And here they are on Dacapo. They are beautiful works. Really, really beautiful works. The 7th is a big choral thing. The Requiem has some fairly interesting comparisons with Berlioz. It's only like, half an hour long, 40 minutes long. It's much shorter. And the symphonies themselves, well, they have titles. And you want to know what the titles are? Are you curious? I knew you would be. Wait a minute. I'm going to tell you what the titles are. They're really, really cool. Let's see. We've got Symphonie Poétique, Symphonie Tragique, that's number 2. Symphonie Lyrique, number 3. Symphonie Majestueuse is number 4. Symphonie Sérieuse. Well, if you know your Berwald, and you know that one, Sérieuse is number 5. And Symphonie Spirituelle is number 6. And it's only written for strings. It's one of the most beautiful works for string orchestra of this period. I mean, I could do a whole string symphony thing too, and maybe I will someday, and this would feature prominently. It's a very, very beautiful work. And then the choral symphony is number 7. It's great stuff. And then there's the Requiem. Yes, with the Danish National Symphony Orchestra and Choir under Thomas Dausgaard. I mean, you gotta hear this stuff. This is a wonderful, wonderful find, Hamerik is. And I leave it up to you to continue finding what comes after Hamerik. Oh, of course, Holmboe. Now, the Holmboe situation is rather interesting because it was rather neatly divided between Bis and Dacapo. Bis got the symphonies, although there are some on Dacapo too, but earlier recordings. The symphony cycle is on Bis, and there are some other Holmboe things too. But Dacapo basically got everything else. And Holmboe wrote music in series, big series. I mean, it was a very, very, let's see, what were his years? He died in 1996, 1909 to 96. I mean, he wrote a whole pile of string quartets, and it was like 15 or more of them, I don't remember. And he also did a wonderful series of chamber concertos, 13 of them, for all kinds of instruments and combinations of instruments. Here's the first volume. They're all gathered here. They're on 4 independent discs. They may have been boxed up since, I don't know, because I have the individual releases. But this is volume 1. And for example, Chamber Concerto number 1 is for piano, strings, and timpani. Number 2 is for flute, violin, strings, and percussion. Number 3 is for clarinet and chamber orchestra. And they span Holmboe's entire career. It's another wonderful series, every bit as rewarding as that of the symphonies. And here they are on Dacapo. And there's also this complete string quartets. They're working on a new cycle of the complete string quartets. They have an older one with the contra quartet, and now they've got a new one coming. And they also have the sinfonietas, which are another series. It's a fascinating composer, Holmboe was. He tended to do things in groups. So if you find a group that you like, you can probably find some other works within that group that you like. But the chamber concertos are must-listen stuff. Wonderful, wonderful music. So, neoclassical, Stravinskyan, somewhat Eastern European inflected because his wife was Romanian. There's all kinds of, Bartok-y, really cool, really, really wonderful. So after Holmboe, we have this, which just arrived, hot off the presses. I've heard the individual releases, but now we're all boxed up. Per Norgard, whatever you want to call him, his 8 symphonies. Now, he was born in 1932, and he's still hopping around. He's still with us, which is lovely. He's possibly Denmark's, major composer now, or major symphonist, maybe. I mean, I don't know enough about everybody in Denmark to be able to say that, but he's definitely one of them. And his 8 symphonies are supposedly heavily influenced by Sibelius and also Nielsen and Holmboe and all those people. Do they sound that way? Well, not really. He's much more of an avant-gardist. He's much more of I wouldn't call him atonal. I would sort of call him non-tonal. That is, the music I think is pretty followable and often just fascinating sonically. He deals with what he calls the infinity series and music in multiple tempos and lots of textural layering and things like that. And they are a genuine, extraordinary personal statement, these 8 symphonies, and well worth getting to know. I mean, I've enjoyed just about all of them. I really need to listen to this all over again now before I talk about it more intelligently. But I do want to point out that Dacapo is still going strong, and this is really one of their major releases in recent years. So there you go. Per Norgard's 8 symphonies. Totally cool. Next, we've got 3 more to go. You ready? C.F.E. Horneman. Now, who, you might wonder, is C.F.E. Horneman? Well, he died, I guess he died around, 1906. They give us a date. He actually died in 1906. He was born in 1840. Most of his music is theatrical. It's music for plays, incidental music, that sort of thing. Nielsen was a big admirer. This is wonderful music. If you want some really good late Romantic theatrical music, like Nielsen's theatrical music, Sibelius's theatrical music, the Scandinavian countries had this fabulous theatrical tradition and big orchestras in their theaters. Remember Sibelius's The Tempest was written for Copenhagen originally. And, Nielsen's Aladdin and all those things. I mean, so they did all this stuff. And, of course, they had fabulous playwrights. They had Ibsen. They had Strindberg in Scandinavia. I mean, not necessarily in Denmark or in Finland or wherever. But, yes, wonderful playwrights who did all this symbolist stuff, which is, of course, symbolist plays are fairy tales for adults, which means, and sometimes they're not even that adult, which means there's a lot of room for music in them. So this disc of orchestral works, that's all it's called, is Horneman Orchestral Works, contains the Gurra suite, which, excuse me, to Drachmann's drama Gurra. Now you know Gurra. You know Gurra from Schoenberg's Gurra Lieder. This is the same guy. You've got Tova's funeral procession and all these things that happen in the Gurra Lieder, only they happen in 16 minutes, which I think is just fabulous. Instead of an hour and a half, you got the whole thing in 16 minutes and a few interludes and entr'actes from the incidental music of the play. And then we've got the suite, the Battle with the Muses, Kampen med Muserne from 1896, and the Overture Heroique, the Heroic Concert Overture from 1867. So that's much earlier. He was only a 27-year-old kid when he wrote it. And finally, the suite of Calanus from 1890, which is the biggest work here, 23 minutes. This is really enjoyable, fun music to listen to. I mean, I really cannot recommend it highly enough. You're going to just plot when you hear it. Absolutely gorgeous and enjoyable and beautifully played. And it's an SACD. It's fabulously recorded. First class stuff. Who's playing this? It's the Danish National Symphony Orchestra under Johannes Gustafsson. And you're not going to find this music so easily anywhere else. So go for it. I mean, it's been recorded before, by the way. Some of it has, but still, go for that one. Next, well, here's something that's not necessarily Danish. The performers are, but it's Mozart. Lucio Silla. One of the things that Dacapo has is the Danish radio Sinfonietta. They've done, Fischer, that is, did a wonderful box of the complete Mozart symphonies. He did a Beethoven cycle, but that's on Naxos. The Mozarts are here on Dacapo, and they're very, very good. And he's done some early Mozart operas, the ones that nobody cares about, which is really cool because early Mozart is still Mozart. And even though this is a classic opera seria, he was like 16 when he wrote it for Milan, and it was very successful. It did very well. I mean, it's a classic Dacapo aria. It has reams of secco recitative and Dacapo arias. I mean, what did I call it? I called it an opera seria. I don't know what I'm saying. Ignore me, okay? It's the Danish. It's getting my tongue all twisted. I think I may even call the Danes Norwegians at some point. You know, just focus on the music, not on me, okay? Anyway, it's a beautiful opera with zillions of fabulous Dacapo arias there. I think I got that straight. And this is the best performance of it out there. It's actually been recorded, 3 or 4 or 5 times. And you're not going to do any better, even though the singers are not like, the household words. They're all extremely capable, and they sing beautifully. And Fischer's performance is really exciting. I mean, it's hard to get excitement sometimes in opera seria because it moves at a deliberate pace. That's the nature of the beast. But this is a very exciting performance of a very long opera. It's a good, 2.5 or more hours long of young Mozart. And so, the series is really fun. There's a couple things in it, but this is the jewel. Lucio, Silla. Enjoy it. Get it. However, the last, the greatest, the coolest for me personally, and I've done videos about this guy, is Knudåge Riisager. Yeah, there you go. Spell it and pronounce it yourself. That's the guy. This is like one of the major things that Dacapo has discovered and promoted, because there are about 6 or 7 Riisager discs, and I did a whole video about him, so you can go look him up and watch that video. I've got samples and all kinds of stuff. He wrote symphonies, but most of all, he wrote ballets. Really wonderful ballets. He was a composer more in the French style. He had that kind of aesthetic. His symphonies tend to be light and frothy, and his ballets are poetic and just fabulous. Fascinating works. Absolutely fascinating. And this disc has 2. One is called Qarrtsiluni, and the other is called Manerenen, which means moon reindeer. These are both ballets based on indigenous peoples' mythology. In this case, it's the Sami people and Inuit folk music. And wow, are these great. Beautiful, beautiful works. This whole series is great. And frankly, Dacapo, if you're listening, take all of your Riisager and box it up and release it as a set, because he really deserves that kind of attention. And anybody who wants one of these is going to want all of them. And you don't want people to have a hard time trying to find this stuff, because some are available, some aren't available. They go in and out of print. You know how it goes, right? He deserves a box. And if you're going to do more, and then put it in a box. Do something, but make sure it's in a box. That's my recommendation. But one way or another, you really have to listen to some of this guy's music. It is first class. And those of you who have been following this, entire saga of videos since the beginning, and now we're at about, we're getting close to 1,600 of them, will know that I did one on this composer specifically. So you can go and listen to that, and I think there's some samples and other things with it. But boy, is this great! And Dacapo has my eternal gratitude for having allowed me to discover this fabulous music. It's absolutely amazing. His dates, by the way, were 1897 to 1974, and it's world class stuff. So that, my friends, is 10 absolutely stunning discs of unusual and offbeat repertoire by a fabulous independent label. I love this series, and so many of you have responded well to it, so don't worry. We're going to keep going. I see no end in sight. So keep on listening, friends. Thank you so much for joining me. Take care.